So, grand rising to everyone on this beautiful Sunday morning. Um, we're just opening it up to the opening up the space. Maybe we'll clear space with a deep breath. Get out any static thoughts and energy, and let in this bright. We're gonna do the contrast on this bright day of the sun and intense light. We're gonna bring some knowledge of the deep, dark new moon with no light. But that's just the way it is, right? That's a really great connection and a great start and a great resonance to be blessed with on this day. So in order to dial this energy in, I'd like to recognize not only the moon for the light that it brings, but more than anything for the gifts that are unseen that we more so intuit and feel and sometimes aren't able to express. But little do we know that it's expressed through our very waking life and every action, not only that we take, but what is seen by ourselves and others, and how this celestial body within us helps us just function and set sail on this current that we're on.
This is a really important new cycle. We are working on this. The energy of today and the last couple of days was on preparing the soil of our next cycle. This is a new moon energy. We are now creating intentions that for the things that we want to plant in our brand new soil that we prepared for the last couple of days or weeks. And we're looking at these places within us to see what we want to manifest and how we want to manifest it and who we want to be in this next cycle. So the going inside and looking at you, allowing the light of the sun to shine on those inner dark areas that need attention. It's like time to dust them off and say, shall I plant this new seed this time? Shall I continue watering the seeds that I've planted? So this is the beginning of that next cycle.
When we enter these cycles, not only on this somewhat microscopic level, because from it's interesting to look at the connection between the moon and us as microscopic, but it is because there's so much going on infinitely within us that's the second point after the beginning is our relationship with the moon. And to dive deeper into what that means is that it's like in the womb when your seed is pure light, right? And when it's planted in a dark, fertile space, which is our womb. And like that, our thoughts and our visions are equal to that. One thing that I need to share, I feel the need to share with everyone is that when we envision our intentions or envision what we're creating, more because it's more than intent once we start to envision it, once we start to take action, we're now in the movement of creating. So when we begin that, it's important one to see where you where you're going without limitations. And when something comes in and it says, well, I'm not fit enough yet, or I don't have enough money yet, or I don't, it's important to stop right there and move past it and still envision something as if you have everything that you assume you need in order to manifest these things. And it is an assumption because how many times has life really checked in with you to give you a checklist? You make checklists, but life not necessarily, unless you know how to look at the and symbols and the signs around you, which is something more what we're touching on, so that you can look at the sky or feel what's going on within and know what time it is, literally. So when one of the things about English, once we begin to write things down, is that English is a broken language. It comes to us in half. 26 letters of the alphabet is only half of what actually exists in ancient languages. And knowing that, we have to be really careful of the wording we use when expressing ourselves both on paper and verbally. And that's one of the things that we'll be diving into. And if you listen, sometimes you can see how people who are manifestors, they're very articulate in the words that they use in regards to their vision.
And that goes back to taking the time and the energy to be still and not rush forward with your thoughts, not rush forward with your words, not rush forward with your actions. So I love this time because I really call it the internalizing ritual time where you go back inside and you slow it down so that you can form the true words that represent the energy that you want to create. Taking our time. We're not good at taking our time and we're not good at being patient and um, understanding how to do that. That takes time too, I think. Don't you think? It's just slowing it down and giving ourselves a chance to breathe or rest. I was thinking about that this morning as I was watering the garden. The time I spend outside is really sacred to me because, like Christy was saying, I'm paying attention to the signs and the symbols. And I noticed that I haven't been attentive. And it took me to say, God, I spent so much time indoors doing busy work, and I forgot about the gentle, quiet moments that I need. That allow me to thrive so that I can prepare for this day. So watering my garden, it really is my sacred time. And it is a time for me to clear my head and say, how do I want to start this? What words do I want to represent me? But more importantly, I was starting to sing and I thought, oh yeah, that's right. These are primal sounds that resonate in our body and help wake up those sleepy places. So yeah, taking our time.
And that's an important point is beyond words, knowing that a lot of the times we function off of, well, is this something I see? Is this something I've heard? And not often enough is there a validation of what we feel, even though that what we feel is a direct compass to the divine. And uh, understanding one of the components of the moon is that it does create this for the whole earth itself. It creates like these boundaries so that what's within that womb, which is the earth, can be created. That being said, we're privy to that as well. When that's happening, we're privy to it. Though a lot of people aren't knowing of that. So others who are privy and have that knowledge are creating during these times. So I think the first step is, do I want to be a player or do I want to create my own reality or my player in someone else's reality? And I feel that's really important at a time where a lot of people feel as if what's going to happen in our near future and in our distant future is dependent on who's running anything that's external to who you are.
Amen.
Knowing that that is false is one of the most important things I want to share and bring forward, like create that reality even in this moment that we're talking about. We're not the only ones talking about it. Is a way of living. It's a place where others tap in, others have tapped in, and others will continue to tap in because it is the creative space that exists. And unless you know that that is your birthright, you may wander as if you need to ask someone, what is it that I create next? Believe me, when I say envision your visions with no boundaries, I really mean that. I don't mean, well, let's see what happens with the government.
Right.
Let's see what happens with the doctor told me that I'm not going to get better or anything like that. Like, can you liberate yourself to the point where you simply allow yourself to see your visions with no limitations?
We really ask you to um, use that gift that we were given as children, your imagination. Your imagination is one of the most powerful energies that we possess within us that are given to us as a gift for um, our evolution, actually. And Chrissy's right. We are constantly distracted. There's baseball game or there's this and that's by design. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm saying that the world is waiting for us and we're busy, making a bet on the next game or we're losing. We're being programmed to focus on external things to represent our joy or our need to exist, right? Instead of diving into this unlimited field of energy that we possess. And I guess that's what we're asking you to do. We're asking you to shake away the external distractions. Not to say that you can't engage in them, but just know that they're there by design to keep us from moving forward, to keep us from our evolution. And I guess we're challenging you to wake up.
Well, this is definitely a space that is in existence. So this is also it's just a space, an option if you want to walk into your life, because your life is happening regardless. As long as you have breath, something's unfolding, and you're definitely part of others' realities, let alone your own. So it's always a choice of like what you're gonna wear the next day. It's the same with what thoughts will dive into. One of the things that um, I've been working with the people I work directly with as clients is I know I've had at least four that what comes up is cultivating joy. And at the beginning, they have come to a place where the last memories of real joy were in childhood. So one of the starting points for someone that feels lost in how can how can I start from there and be here at this moment is that I feel that it, we don't give enough, there's not enough awareness around that. Just the way you could be here today and you could think of, or something could remind you of something that happened 12 years ago, and you could even start sobbing. Feel that I haven't let go of this pain that occurred such and such time ago. And it has power, right? It will really bring you to that place, and you will feel certain emotions that aren't here necessarily now, but you could feel them then. Well, the same can be done we're in a world of duality. So if that exists, its polar opposite exists.
Right
And you
next
could
to each
dive
other.
into the last time you felt that joy, just that feeling. And if you have to begin at where that was, you're creating it at just thinking about it. And if you have to start with, I found joy in something, it could have been external, although I doubt that if you were a child, um, then that's a place to begin. Because from there, and these little time traveling moments that you may have to take in order to bring that into this space, it's still worth it so that you can, this world is a quantifier. So the moment you bring something in, it grows, which is why we have to be careful of the thoughts that bring us down, the heavier thoughts. Because the moment we bring in something buoyant, then it'll quantify that too. That's the beauty of this universe and this earth. Sometimes people could go into the space where it's like, why is there so much bad in the world, or why is there so much, and although that's a subject in of itself, one of the things is that if you feel something and you continue to perpetuate that, the earth will quantify it for you. So how about choosing something that is life-giving, right, and perhaps propels you through the space versus holding you in and weighing you down?
That goes back to, I love that idea that, and it's true, right here is pain and suffering and my bills, and right here is joy and peace and love, and they live right next to each other. They do, they live right next to each other. And our job is to look at the whole picture and not just focus at the thing that's we get this pigeon eye view of what's in front of us, and we forget all the heavenly glory that is available to us. And we're asking you, open up the aperture and see that, oh, there is peace and love in this moment, right here, right now. What do we need? Nothing. I don't need food. I don't need a place to live. I don't, right here, right now, I have everything. I have a roof over my head. I have beautiful people in my life. I don't worry about what my next meal is. So for me, in this moment, I need nothing. So can I say there's joy and peace in this moment? Yes, it lives right here, right now. Are there bigger things that I do need to focus on? Yeah, there are. And and after this moment, I might go into that moment, which it's like I get what you're saying is there's this possibility of taking a breath, like we did when we started, and saying, okay, I've been through worse, and moving into the places, where am I right here, right now? Continue to go back inside. Is there a place where I can, am I okay in the moment? Do I have water? Do I have, it's just, I need a little space so that I can actually go back into what I think is a big mess or a hot, issue. So time, I love the idea of time travel, and I love the idea of opening the aperture so that you can see that love lives right next to pain and sorrow. And one more thing you said I really liked was that all these places live inside of us. We do have joy, and we obscure it with busy stuff. Or anyway, I like the idea of I believe in time travel. I believe that I can move backwards and forwards. And like Chrissy said, if I'm looking forward, if I'm gonna predict any future, why does it have to be the worst? Why can I not choose to pick a future that is beautiful and full of love and full of people and full of exploration and full of manifestation? Why is it do I have to choose, that it's going to be hard, it's just like it was for my parents or just like it was yesterday? Why do I have to choose it? I love the beginning of the day where I get to choose, how do I want to make this day? So that if we can choose, I'm saying why not choose something in the process of enhancing your life instead of holding it back and compressing it.
I bring this up because in the creative process of any creation, whether it's your life or another being or a project, or at this time, in the time of the new moon, sometimes we confuse that the womb and life can be cold at times. When of conception, there is coldness under the earth, as any animal knows. If it wants to cool off, it just digs a little because the earth is actually cold. Knowing that is that when you feel there is something that's burning up in your life, basically being destroyed, it's okay to go into that space that may feel vast, alone, cold, which is what the new moon brings. That's why women, they say that when we're menstruating, they're like, oh, that we're emotional, or that are we're quick to react. But the thing is that we are in that space that's vast, and we do feel a little of the coldness, and there is some alone. There's a feeling of being alone, but that's okay. That is what the womb feels like. Knowing that you could go in there is where you have the opportunity to either create more, like what she was saying, you create either more of what's bearing you down, or you create the not even the opposite end, but somewhere the balance in between. Because here's the thing about, you don't want just good or bad, because you're going to get one or the other on the other side. If you're going to come right back down. If you're this high, you're going to come right back down. But when you're in the middle, you have just enough of both. Bringing yourself to that place, you may still feel, again, the coldness and the vastness, but you have to remind yourself this is the point in time. It's the time of inception. So during the new moon, to bring it back, what will we do with this space? And, I saw this foolish commercial the other day. And it has to do with Blue Shield Health, which when I was watching it, I was like, what does this have to do with it? And it's about this pandemic and how when we go back to normal, let's be different. It's something that's like their slogan, something like that. Like we want what was, but let's be. It's insinuating let's be better, but it's just insinuating it. So it creates that tone, but it doesn't really give you anything. It's not feeding you anything. But it took me to a deeper thought of that. That's true though. We're not, there is no normal that you're gonna go back to. If that's hard, I suggest you start assimilating it now because that's what change is. But that's okay. So that's what I'm talking about, that creative inception point. So you're not gonna go back. And why would you want to? But it is the opportunity to take anything that works and then quantify it and make something that serves you versus what we see happen when we're at the mercy of something that we're serving. So I don't know if that
It's like
came clear.
I'm going to ask you some questions so we can clarify. But first, it's like saying, it's like we're here at home more, so we started to clean and we started to move things around to make space for us having to stay home and be in our space that we neglected. And then we move some furniture and we find there's a hole in the wall, right? There's a hole in the wall, and it's like, oh, I didn't know there was a hole in the wall. And now that you know it's there, it's like you can never just let it be. You have to do something about it. You have to shift your energy to address it. And you can cover it up again if you want, but you're never not going to remember that it's still there's a hole in the wall that needs to be addressed. And this is this new place that we're in. We can never go back. We know there's a hole in the wall, and the hole is that we have not spent time to address our stuff. And the other hole in the wall is that we have not planned very well for each day and our future days. We realize that we were not ready and we need to do something about it. And so I'm asking you, how? What is some way, one tangible thing that you can say is like, how can I make that first step to shift into a new awareness so that I don't have to stay still because I can't go backwards? What is a good tangible suggestion that you
One of the first things I could say is don't fret. It's like Levin Beaumont says, shift happens.
can?
So
Shift, I
it's
like that.
happening, yet the question to be asked of self is what I perceive will happen next. Does it serve me and is it my vision? If you find that it is, you're on a great track and onward. But if you find that there's fear and perhaps an unknowing of what comes next, then the first place to start is your beliefs. And I guarantee you that those feelings are there, then beliefs have been challenged because that's why you're starting to feel that. So if you, yes, exactly. So Sana, which is Elena's dear sister, she says that one of her practices is that she likes drawing a door and opening it. So I would say that to add to that imagery, I would say that on that door, on it are your beliefs. But can you move past them? And are you willing
Oh,
to?
that's
Can you
beautiful.
question? Honestly, the reality has already challenged those beliefs. That's why you're in a juxtapose. Like, oh, where am I going to go? Will you allow yourself to challenge your beliefs? Will you allow them to transform by what's already unfolding? It happens. I can't stress enough that your evolution is happening regardless. Whether it's this lifetime or another, you're still headed in the same direction. If you embrace that, you actually feel like you're now on this procession with your ancestors, with your comrades, the people who surround you, and the beings, because the animals and the plants, we're all on the same journey. And now you have a tribe to move with. If you want to feel alone, you could go that route, but you have to ask yourself, are you liking the result?
I really, really want to go back to that and what you just said. So what I heard Chrissy say, and you can correct me if I'm a little skewed, but is that there one step you could do is put down, even physically, right? What are my beliefs? What sometimes you just need to write it down, and then imagine that that is your door. That I really love this imagery. Thank you, sister, for that. That this is your door, and this is where you keep coming every day. It's like, here's my door. These are my beliefs. This is what stops me every day. And I love the imagery of opening the door. Just put them aside. Do not throw them away. There you cultivated those beliefs for a long time. Just put them aside and look through the doorway.
Well, beliefs are not knowing. So are those beliefs based on the knowing? That might, some you might need to throw away.
Well, I'm not saying you're not going to throw them away. I just put them aside for a moment, right? Just put them aside for a moment, because we don't want to tear everything away from you all at once. But open the door and look inside and see if these beliefs actually support what's on the other side of the door. What's on the other side of the door could be happiness, could be social engagement. It could be something that you've always looked at or you thought about, but you didn't imagine yourself being there. Creating a business that supports healing other people. I used to be a school teacher, and I thought, I put all my energy into school teaching. How can I do what I'm doing now? And it took me to stop thinking about what others thought about why I wouldn't be teaching, and say, well, I really want to pursue this, and doing it anyway, in spite of what anybody would say or think. And it took a lot of courage, but I put it aside. I wonder if I could go to that place and not worry about what people thought about me. That's one of the beliefs, that what people think about me is important. I had to put that one aside so that I could go through the door. Do you understand? It's like we have the possibility of saying, well, you know what? Once I open this door and go through, I won't need those beliefs anymore. And believe me, once I did pursue going back to school and leaving teaching behind in that way, um, there was a lot of fear that maybe I made a mistake, because now I have to make a living. But I just decided that every time I entered a job, when I started, I worked for other people before I'm working for ourselves now, like you know. And I was challenged to do what they wanted me to do. And then I thought, oh God, I'm getting money, but it's not really how I see it. And it took me to decide that what I needed to do and how I wanted to see healing was more important than the money I was making. And I just had to also, that was another door. Like, the money was important. I can't live without this money. Those are my beliefs. And I like, but I was not happy, and I could feel the stagnation of that, hitting that same place. So I had to open that door and say, is the money more important, or is working at an unlimited possibility with people in ways that was beyond just what's wrong with you? I'm going to adjust you. I knew I had to work differently. So I had to let that go and walk through the door and say, money is not the most important thing. It's allowing myself to look at a person differently. And I have to do it away from the structure that was being presented to me. So yeah, we have to keep getting to the door, decide, opening it. I love that. And decide, can I go through? Trusting the inner force, because Chrissy says we're always evolving, where there's an evolution happening. It's happening. and we feel it like a restlessness, like there's something wrong, but we don't open that door to our heart and look in and say, oh, there's something I really like about me that I'd like to express, and allowing the door to open. Oh, but my heart's been broken. I can't do it. Is you have to decide, is that belief something I want to keep feeding, or can I trust that who I am and what I present means something to me enough that I'm going to have courage to step through, and maybe somebody else will notice those gifts in me as well, whether it's friends or family, whatever.
That's a great example of how it can look to an individual when what your vision and feel what you feel feeds you is challenged, and you might need to make decisions that you thought you solidified prior to that. Just to I'm gonna pull Sana back in this conversation because she brought up some great points as Elena was talking, and one of the things that she added to that was she said space, creativity, vastness, possibilities on the other side.
It's all of you.
And that is sometimes what scares me. But that's what I came into that. What the womb is cold, vast, and vast. I think vast covers that because it's like if somebody drops you in the ocean, you're like in the middle of it, which the ocean is space. So that being said, is part of the inspiration of bringing this insight into what this lunar body is, our connection with it within and externally, is that it does bring us to these points. It'll bring you to this vastness. And sometimes we're afraid to create within. It's like an artist that is afraid of the blank page when they feel uninspired. But that I want to touch on that. That is the nature of this creative space. So fret not, don't fear it. Asana said another thing that I'm sure touched on what Elena was talking about once she was at the crossroads of, will I make this choice for self? Because what she felt, the vision she wanted to feed was coming from within. It wasn't necessarily something someone was feeding her. Mm-hmm. So, and trusting your heart, that goes back to what we began the conversation with, which was about feeling and how feeling is driving us to what serves us. There are different feelings, and fear could be mixed up in something that will still be fruitful. The thing is, again, to use the analogy of the door, is to step through the door. Mm-hmm. And the new moon will definitely bring that. I think that bringing up, when we have a conversation, say on the full moon, or if we utilize the wanting and the waxing, we'll still be able to bring this resonance that they have so that you can utilize it for yourself. There's an expansion that happens when you relate yourself to nature, to the cosmos. You expand your own capabilities because now you know that you're connected to something that is running forward, running always, whether you jump into that current or not. And yet, your life at this moment, I feel, is bringing everybody to a place that will. It's not about will you stop, because you have been stopped.
Yeah.
So, in that space that is now granted, again, will you serve your own life, or are you serving the reality of someone else? I capsized everything only because we're coming to the end of our hour, and we do usually open it up for questions on this side on Instagram. If there's any questions, feel free to type in. If you see on the low bar, there is a little box with a question mark. You could tap that and you could type in any question and we'll answer it. If you're on Zoom, you could also type in the chat and we'll answer it. Yeah. And while we're waiting for questions, why don't you tell them a little bit about, as females, what's happening in our body at this
time? During the new moon, the energy of the moon, and it really is this internalizing your body is all bodies actually, the ocean, all bodies of water are being affected by the moon's presence, and the ocean recedes, it goes down. Uh, the fluids within us go down. Our boobs hang a little bit because they get pulled down because the fluid gets pulled down into the womb. This is your body's way of feeding and expelling and pulling down so that it can detox. So it's actually an energetic physical field that happens to us. We will have rises and falls of our fluids, just like the ocean on throughout a day. But when it's a new moon, you feel it a little bit more, which is probably why people want to go inside. The energy around us is pulling us down. Also, if you're menstruating, your um, your your uterus is like a little suction cup. It swells and draws, swells and draws. But as the fluids are being pulled down, it swells to fill the space to collect and absorb and hold, so that when you actually have menses or you bleed, you can it continue. That's why they say my period dropped. I dropped today, or I felt it's come down. That's it's the Even the language expresses what's going on within us. The other thing that happens is
And like you said, you mentioned if you're
if you're
mensing,
menstruating,
so what that alludes to is that although if you're not, whether it's because you're
whether
a
you
male or because you're already uh, over with that transition in your life, is that that's the beauty of it, is that the earth is going through that same process that she's talking about.
yeah.
So there's still this creative component that is taking place.
Yes.
It's
So there's a clearing and a cleanse and a space. It's literally emptying the space so that you can replant. And so whether you're a man or a menopausal woman who's no longer menstruating, or even a menstruating female, you will notice that there's um, your job is to allow that fluid to move through you. Rest. This is a good time to rest, to be still, to honor your internal time, so that you literally have the energy to uh, plant and move forward on the next cycle. And spiritually and energetically, let's see what that clearing and preparing the soil is about. Just
yeah,
before you
yeah.
do that, one of the things that I did when I was menstruating was that I would use my menstrual blood during that time, and I would use it to feed my garden. And I just remember um, the the benefits of doing that. My garden in those sections that I used the menstrual blood was amazing. So all of that stuff was like preparing the soil and giving it energy. This is the time that we feed our next mission or our next transition. And it did that physically, and it can do that emotionally and spiritually too.
And that's a great point of utilizing your blood, because with your blood, your hair, your nails, what this does too is that you now recycling into the cycle that's happening regardless, because the earth will live. And you tap right into it and you were able to. So if your blood holds the toxins of what you've ingested, and what you've ingested has maybe been driven by your emotions, and all of this is now in the earth to be recycled, you have a literal, I mean, it's more than a ritual or ceremony. You are plugged into this current. That's what we talk about when we say a current or a movement. It's that there's a procession that is happening, and you could only interrupt your participation in it, but the actual happening will not be interrupted.
Yeah. So no matter what kind of body you have, it is a good time to symbolically. I love that. In fact, I used to, and I haven't done it in a while. I used to cut just little bits of my hair. It's a good time to cut your nails during the new moon and plant them as the food for the next, and symbolically as a type of prayer to
Oh yeah,
feed that
but I mean,
section.
anytime you cut your nails, anytime your hair
True.
gets cut, to put it back to the earth, it does the same thing.
Yeah, I'm not, yeah, that's true. I'm
Instead of
just saying, as a practice, if you want to use this energy, use this symbolically as a time to do that. Of course, you're gonna have to touch your nails a little more often. But any questions or any comments? We would love to have it. We're coming a little closer to the end.
I feel that one of the important points to leave people with is we were talking about language. I spoke on language and then I didn't touch back on it. So if you are in the practice of writing down intentions, I'd like to give just a couple of little
yes.
pointers. Is that stray away from words like I want or I will because that's in the future, or I would like, I wish, because this is more of you proclaiming something. Of, for example, I am in I am living amongst nature, and as I begin to align to a space that welcomes me where I can grow food and have water in order to be sustainable, I am here remaining connected, awaiting the signs and symbols. There's just this there are these words that keep you in action, and there are these words that are holding you to something that will happen. So that's a pointer I give with writing things out. As the old books would say, let it so it is said, let it be done. That's basically the learning curve you want to stick to. So it is, let it be done.
Yeah, so it is, let it be done. And I in the beginning when I first started doing the new moon intentions, I used to say I want and I wish, and now I say I see myself. I see myself uh, moving in, or I see myself opening up to all the people and the places that bring more joy into my life. You could be more. This is the main thing I like to say about new moon intentions is if you can see yourself do what would it look like? What is the place that you want to evolve to? In the beginning, when you're first starting, you might need to just be a little more specific. As you evolve, you're going to find that this is going to be too limited. It's going to be too limited. But how would you like to see it? How would you like to see it? Express those thoughts. Um,
Do you know enough about where you're placing yourself in that vision? There are times, like how many times have you maybe wished to be close or to know someone, and once you're in that, it might not have been the way you allowed yourself to rush forward into. So, start small. If it's, I'd like to know someone's name, it's a good place to start before seeing yourself ending a life with someone, because there's many layers to individuals, to realities, including careers and endeavors. How many times have, or personally, I've seen maybe mountaintops that I'm like, oh, I want to climb that mountaintop. But once I got up there, I've been on trails that I've been like, I don't think I'll do this again because the way up was something else. Maybe even sometimes paths that are no longer there that you have to use rope forces. Like, I might not do this again personally. So, and careful with the detail that you magnetize, because you're always attracting. We don't really find things, we attract them. So
uh, yeah, so I mean, in the beginning, you're gonna see how your intentions are manifested. So it's a learning process. I say just practice, keep practicing, and if there's a place for us to do a intention setting session. We'll maybe that's something we can do in the future. One question we got was, is there a ceremony that can be done for this kind of burial ritual? And this is the thing. Ceremony, I think, is big and grand and it includes lots of people, and ritual is something personal. And I actually feel like these kinds of things are personal. So how you decide to uh, give thanks for those things that you've carried, even these old beliefs. I mean, in some capacity, they served you, whether it's through protection or just feeling safe. I mean, that might have served you for that moment. And I believe that, as Chrissy says, because we are evolving with or without our knowledge, we get this restlessness. And there's a moment where we're just too big for our clothes or our space, and we have to release that, like a chrysalis or or bug having to shed mulch its skin. There's a moment where we have to mulch these things and giving thanks in your own way. I like simple things. Like if I cut my hair, I actually do take my hair, I wrap it, and I bury it in the garden. And I feed the worms. And in that process, I'm like, thank you. I don't know what part of my history you are, but I pray that this moves forward and brings life not just to you, but releases me from something I no longer need. That is kind of my simple, very easy ritual. I don't do that ceremonially. I just think that that's my own private process. And there's no limit to how you can address things that you want to release. Um, I just know that one time I burned my wedding dress. That was out of anger, and uh, that didn't serve me so well. It was actually fun to burn it, but I knew the process of why I burned it. And eventually I had to go back and undo the energy and the emotions connected to it. And that was another ritual.
Perhaps that was your like compulsion. Like, that
Oh yeah,
was what
definitely.
ignited it.
I definitely needed to do it. And boy, when it ignited, the part of the reason I didn't like it was that I didn't realize the fabric had chemicals in it. And I was like, ooh, that was not a good thing.
You
to
released
do.
a lot.
Yeah, there was chemical toxins, and it was, in a way, it was stuff that I still had. So that was one of
Those are
them.
things you learned during the. So in adding from to the, we've hit this one thing, this new moon, and we've rotated around it from these different lenses and different perspectives, right? And one of the things that we're coming to an end, and I definitely wanted to dial in this um, and the gratitude for our ancestors and this in, intricate mapping that they have for our traveling, our travel time, our journey through the cosmos, is that when it comes to the moon, they saw that the moon is like our grandmother because it has been here before people, before the two lived on this earth, and it will more than likely remain until after. So it carries the memories. It carries not only the memories our own, because our experiences are reflected through that, but it also carries at times the experiences of our ancestors, not only the human fleshy ones. I mean, our ancestors, the water, the ocean, and um, what that what that brings us to is that there are moments where we may feel that the weight that we're experiencing is something beyond what we have cultivated ourselves this lifetime. And for some people, that is very real because we are this bag of elements. The five elements are in everything, whether it's these individuals, the table in front of me, they all contain the five elements. For some of us, perceiving things that are deep and that are unseen come easy. A lot of those people are composed mostly of water. And for some of us, change and what you cannot see may come not as easy to you. And some of those people are composed more so of earth. I bring that up because that's part of what I did in order to dive into and be ready for today is I remembered one, my connection with water. Then I looked at my elemental makeup as a reminder, and I'm composed primarily of water. So I dove in and I said, here's my connection to this celestial existence that is water. Like it just exists. So what will you bring through today? And that's why I'm bringing up the ancestors, because what the Mexica had down was that in order to free ourselves from the constraints of what we feel we don't have a participation in creating our reality, is actually through diving into our psyche, which is the moon. And in doing that in our dream state, to the ancestors, our dream state was more reality than the waking state. And if we allow ourselves to at least take that perspective and just look at life for a second through that, then we know that what is within, what our thoughts are, more of our thoughts and our feelings, that's where it starts in order to give birth to what's in front of us, and that's what we're sharing, right? So that being said, careful with what you choose to. Thoughts are going to come. You don't need to judge yourself for the ones that you discard.
That's a key point.
That exactly
That
is
is
where
the
are
key
you going to discard them, or are those the ones you're going to birth by sharing them, giving them a reality? And
We can go on that point
yeah.
for hours.
So that comes back to what will you create? There is a question/comment on Instagram I'm going to read from Sana,
It's really
so
a
we
good
could
question.
dive into that. Do you think we are physically carrying the weight of our ancestors? Perhaps emotional, and that it's up to us to finally release and heal? Yes. And if not, it goes to the next generation. Definitely. That's why it's called generation. We're literally generating the reality, and we're quantifying it, as I had touched on earlier. So are we carrying not only the pain, we carry everything. So we carry the ancestors because it's a lineage, like just like our DNA, it's that helix that connects and keeps moving. We are that. So there's the one that dove into the mysteries of the earth or helped people, and but there's also the ones that got drunk and that maybe abandoned children, and that may we know it's there. We see it sometimes within our families right in front of us. There's all of it. So yes, we're all, especially due to our elemental makeup, if it resonates with something that was already here, you may be compelled, feel like this is the direction I must go in. And sometimes, especially when you feel like, why can I not get out of this? I know I don't want to keep living this, but you're again compelled. Yes, you are carrying everything with you.
Yes.
So which ones will you allow? We're like a crystal, and energy just keeps on moving. So which ones will we align with and allow to continue to live in front of us? Because that's what we are. We are our ancestors reincarnate. It is because the consciousness is made up of everything. We say we're everything. We're all connected.
We are.
But then we're going to have to walk that way and realize that that is happening.
Yeah, that really, really is a very key and vital point, that these things run through us. They run through our being. They run through our cells. As long as we have cells and a physical body, those ancestral elements will run through us. And I really want to emphasize that as these things show up, not judging them and not creating a conflict within yourself, and instead recognizing, like, I don't even know what this is. It's uncomfortable and it's not something that I really enjoy. But you know what? I'm going to put love and peace and care there. It's like a child screaming from one generation. You can ignore it, or you can be mad at it, at the child, or you can grab it and say, I don't know what's going on with you, but I'm going to love you. And that is the element within us that we need to also have a peace about, because as Chrissy said, when you focus on a thing, it grows, and you believe that that is all there is about you, and it isn't. It is part of you. Maybe I don't even know how much, but if you want to enhance the spirit that you embody in this, that your infinite divineness is, you must be that and take along the ancestral parts of you, but out of, out of in a different form, not in, some of that will benefit you and some of that you're just going to have to make peace with as you go along the way and evolve. You can actually transform and your DNA, you can actually change the way that the DNA works so that the next generation may not have such a bigger load to carry,
To share an experience that brought me, one of the more recent experiences that brought me to something similar that way, and see the commitment to self and your lineage and how that could be moved, is that for me, when my relationship to alcohol was that when I would when I would consume it, there was a certain experience I had, one that I liked, and then sometimes when in excess or just not the right elemental makeups around me, something different would unleash. In knowing that, there was a knowing behind it, right in a quiet voice in my mind that was like, well, if you choose not to do this and you choose to instead dive into where is this coming from, it's going to take for you to release a lot of your attachments to it. As I started to see the attachments that came from family, like the fact that in experiencing fun, perhaps on my father's side of the family, a lot of times it contained alcohol was present, and that a lot of times to also maybe to connect because people would get more let loose, whatnot. It was present, but then there was these other presences that are also were not being acknowledged through my perception and my connection to alcohol, which were like seeing my uncle fall over on a chair, and I was like, what the hell is wrong with him? I didn't know then that you black out, but like things like that, people who have died from it, people who have lost their families from it. And when I was able to bring that together, I made the choice to see, okay, if I just do not partake in this, then there's all these other things that do come up in healing. But I have seen, and even my on the other end of that, my husband who chose to just dive in and really he paid his life for when it came to alcohol. I see that my daughters, the way they perceive things, they're like, I'm not gonna go down that route because I know that I have the potential to maybe end up like my dad, and not because more so because I might not even be able to help it if I don't know enough about what I'm carrying, but they know enough to just be like, I'm not, it stops here. And it stops here just from not partaking. And then the things that are still left, because there's still pain and be allowing yourself to relate and be vulnerable and perhaps open up from that versus a substance that still remains, and then that's still a challenge for one to dive into. And sometimes that's why it becomes difficult to release these things that again were handed down, and they're handed down even if someone's not like, here, take it. It's just from what we see and also from how we cope. So yes, once you can identify that one of your habits or some cycle that you keep replaying is coming from something you could easily see down your lineage, it definitely can be healed from you, and not only for those that will come after you, but even those that you're already connected to, and you don't have to call them and tell me, guess what, when I stopped drinking. It's just that your DNA is already flowing in everyone. So once you correct it, they catch the fumes, they catch the vapors, as it said in hip hop. They catch the vapors. You do.
Everybody's going to be what you do. What I do for myself radiates and sends an energy through the through the field, and anybody in my field will receive that as well. Um, and so, yeah, what you do affects you backwards, and it affects you forward, and affects you sideways, energetically and time-wise. So my sister yet again has another beautiful point, and the point was that can we use this new moon and set intentions for um, releasing some of our generational trauma? And I do believe what an amazing opportunity for us to use this to take each cycle of the new moon to heal our ancestors and release them from the traumas and the pain they had just by praying for them and intentionally your making that a way to open more space and the evolution to move forward. I mean, I think that's a great idea to take a moment of your new moon and release and pray and give thanks to the generations and use it to help heal your past so that the next generations have unlimited possibilities.
That brings us about to the end of our hour.
Yes.
And we lost connection on Instagram. So onward with life.
Onward and honoring yourself, honoring your intentions, the seeds you want to plant, those things you want to release, and giving yourself the opportunity to take that time to do it is our gift and our message to you today. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for your love and your appreciation.
Wholeness and balance.
Peace.